Hi, everyone. Welcome to Arthritis at Home. My name is Ellen, and I'm the programs coordinator. Today, we're going to be chatting about a really timely and relevant topic. But before you think to yourself, oh, Ellen's just going to tell me to set goals and write down my intentions, that's actually not my aim, not my intention at all. What I hope to do instead is to share some dialogue around what the research says and how it's evolved, and maybe some tricks, tips, strategies that I've used to, help me get closer to doing the things or becoming the person I want to be in my personal and professional life. So with that, let's get into it. So the definition of quote unquote goal setting is the act of selecting an objective you wish to achieve. I think we can all agree on that. But what I want you to reflect on is the fact that we set goals to do what? We set goals to change behavior. When I say change behavior, I mean to add something, to stop doing something, or to modify in some way. And the history behind goal setting actually dates back to almost a decade ago when Cecile Mace carried out the first, what we call empirical studies, which means there were numbers. In the 1960s, Edwin Locke really put this kind of topic on the map in his theory, which essentially states that goal setting is linked to task performance. He and his colleagues found that more specific and ambitious goals led to better performance. So goals that were vague and goals that were too easy were actually detrimental to our performance, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, right? You think if something's easier, it's easier to do, I'm more likely to achieve it, and it's not quite that. And over the last kind of 20 years, we've had this beautiful body of work around what we call SMART goals pop up. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And it's a beautiful way to help us conceptualize goal setting and also to get super clear on them. If you were to set a goal and it meets these 5 criteria, it will be a lot more tangible, 100%. So let's go through each of these letters together. Specific. So ask yourself, how detailed is your goal? So if you have a goal of going on a walk, that's a wonderful goal. How often? Who are you doing with? What are you going to do if it starts raining? So get really nuanced when you think about your goal. Measurable. So how will you monitor your progress, and how often will you monitor your progress, and how will you know when you've completed the task, the goal? Actionable. Again, this goes back to what we just talked about, where the idea of setting a goal that is too easy is actually not good for our performance, right? You want to set a goal that's the perfect amount of challenge, not too easy, but also not too hard. Relevant. Is the goal aligned with your broader personal values? And finally, time bound. Is there a specific time frame in which you want to complete the tasks? And think about, deadlines, how you're going to check in with yourself. Exact dates are actually super helpful in this. So now let's go through an example. So I had used the example of walking more. Okay, I like this goal, right? This goal is a great goal, but is it a SMART goal? Not quite, right? It's not specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound or time-based. Okay, let's add some elements to it. Let's say we're gonna walk 3 times a week. I like this. This is a lot better, right? We have a frequency in there. But Still not at a point where I am so clear on this goal and how I'm going to achieve it. Next step, walk 3 times a week for 15 minutes. That's nice. I know 15 minutes is a time period that I can do personally. I know that I can track that 15 minutes, right, on my phone, etc. I know, or on my watch. And that way I can have the feedback of, I've completed my 15 minutes. But how about this last one here? My last try says walk at a moderate pace around the block 3 times a week after dinner for 15 minutes. So I've just thrown a bunch of elements in there, but let's break it down. So at a moderate pace. So I'm now specifying how hard I'm working around the block and giving an exact location to say where I am walking. 3 times a week stays the same. After dinner for 15 minutes. We're going to come back to this idea of queuing, but if you're able to tie a goal or a task to something that's already happening, or you have something to prompt it, in this case, dinner, it becomes a lot more feasible. So the next thing we're going to talk about are action plans. So now that we have a SMART goal, so to say, you want to be able to put it into action. We will link some templates for action plans, but essentially what you want to do is you want to be able to break it down almost like in a calendar style. The worksheet it looks like a grid. But in my action plan, I would specify, for example, my 3 days per week that I'm walking would be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I would walk with a partner or a friend, and I would actually tick it off on my calendar. That's on my fridge. I use a physical calendar once complete. So that is my kind of action plan. But highly recommend look through the resources, maybe see if they resonate with you, and that's how you enjoy laying out your goals. So SMART goals, action planning have really pushed the field forward. And, we've learned so many things because of kind of these 2 elements that we've added into the body of evidence. Unfortunately, SMART goals, action planning are not as effective as they could be. I'm not saying they're not effective. They're fantastic, right? Great step forward, but how do we now take it to the next level? And I've kind of cued you to kind of start thinking about environmental factors, accountability, and sustainability. So as wonderful as SMART goals are, they don't always address environmental barriers, etc. The accountability component isn't quite utilized. And then sustainability, meaning, I've set the goal, how do I continue the goal? That's also not super apparent in the SMART goal setting and action planning. From kind of my own experiences, I happened to have a friend recommend this book to me called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it is, wonderfully written book. This individual had taken a ton of time to look at the research and really distill it down, so I highly recommend. But I'm just going to give you an overview about some of the ways to think and some of the ways to kind of reconceptualize goal setting that I actually really like. So the way that James Clear has articulated goal setting is instead of what do you want, right? So the way that we frame goal setting currently is I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want to stop doing X, Y, and Z. The way that he's asked his audience to think about goal setting is what am I willing to give up to achieve X, Y, and Z? So what am I willing to let go of? So if I do want to walk 15 minutes around the block after dinner 3 times a week with a friend, does that mean I'm foregoing something else? Does that mean I am watching less TV and maybe I really enjoy that TV show that plays Wednesday nights? Or is it perhaps I'm spending less time with a child, right? There's always a give and a take. So I think that's really important to understand. The other, really useful thing is the model that he's created for understanding behaviors. So the kind of figure on the right that looks like it's in a quadrant, and starts number 1 in the left-hand corner with cue, then you have craving, then you have response, and then you have reward. So I'm going to walk you through this with an example. Cue. You're sitting at your desk at work. Someone brings in a fantastic smelling curry. And you're like, oh, darn. Now I'm hungry. I wasn't hungry for lunch, but now I'm hungry for lunch. So that is your cue, is an external, in this case, an environmental signal that tells you, oh, okay. And then you have a craving. Okay, well, now that I see and smell someone else's lunch, I now am hungry. The response is you also go and grab your lunch. And your reward is you eat your lunch and you are no longer hungry. You are satiated. This model right here is really useful because we can also use it for goals that we want to do. So let's say walking, right? How are we going to cue ourselves to walk? Maybe we're going to leave our shoes right at the door. We'll leave an umbrella and a coat hung up as well, right at the door. So when, after dinner, we walk to our front door, we see them. Craving. So this is a little bit more difficult to build, especially if it's something that is a long-term goal that has delayed gratification. For example, walking right after dinner may or may not make you feel better right away, but you know that the health benefits in years to come will serve you greatly. So thinking to yourself, maybe I can rewire my brain a bit and think of, okay, well, I know that the benefit in this very moment may not be huge, but can I crave the benefit in future? And the response is to go on the walk, and then the reward. So when you think about rewarding yourself, we actually, all of our behaviors are triggered by some sort of reward, right? In the acknowledgement, in the hope of obtaining a reward. So if that means you get back from your walk and your friend tells you, great job, that's reward, right? That is, again, a social reward. Or you come back from your walk and you get to eat your favorite piece of fruit. Whatever that reward is, it is really important to help reinforce the cycle. Awesome. So hopefully that was really useful to help you conceptualize our behaviors and our, in this case, habits, as we move through the cycle time and time again. It becomes habit. So in Atomic Habits, James Clear tells us that it should be absolutely atomic, right? You know how people say to start small? James Clear tells people to start atomic. You're like, okay, what does that mean? So let's again take the example we use. We're going to walk at a moderate pace around the block 3 times a week after dinner for 15 minutes. If I asked you to start small, most people would say, I guess I'll walk for 5 minutes. Like if I were to ask you to break that down into the smallest unit possible, what would you do? Maybe walk for 5 minutes? Okay, this is how James Clear lays it out in his book. He would say, you're going to put your shoes and your coat at the door. That's all. Leave your shoes and your coat there. Day 2, maybe you put on your shoes and your coat after dinner. You don't have to go on your walk. You just put on your shoes and your coat. You are building a habit from its very foundation. Day 3, maybe you put on your shoes and your coat. You step outside, walk to the end of your driveway and come back. Or you can add an intermediate step. You just literally open your door, step outside and come back. And the day after, you walk to the end of your driveway. So you can see how progressive how slow, how small. Because the thing about goal setting is we goal set to achieve something. We don't goal set to change our lives. But that's what goals are, and how it's conceptualized in James Clear's book, is that your habits, you are a total summation of your habits. And I think it's really interesting. It's an interesting way to think about that. So another really useful, I would say, tool that's highlighted in the Atomic Habits book is this idea of cueing. Again, this can be environmental, right? Or usually is environmental. It's definitely external, but usually in the environment. Because think of it this way. Can you have good habits in a poor environment? It's really difficult, right? I will give you an example. So a personal example would be, for me, healthy eating is no longer difficult most of the week. It is very difficult the 1 hour I'm at the grocery store every week. But if I can ensure that there's only whole foods in my home, perishable whole foods, so I know they're going to go bad, so I have to eat them, then this becomes a cue, right, to eat those healthy foods. So instead of, for me, those, reaching for popcorn or chips or something like that, I had now reached for an apple because that's the only thing in my environment. So really the importance of having things or building and structuring your environment. It doesn't have to be huge, right? It can be leaving your shoes at the door if your goal is to do a walk, or if you want to be able to take your medications on time, can you leave your medications out the night before on your countertop? Can you set an alarm, right? An alarm is essentially a cue. Think of it that way. How many of us wake up to alarms every day? That is kind of the unanimous cue that all of us have experienced at some point. And then the next is social context, or you can think of this more as social reinforcement. And I do absolutely believe that we do not buddy up enough. We absolutely underutilize our networks. And to clarify this point further, I'm going to cite a study. So the American Society of Training and Development found that 65% of the individuals enrolled in their study completed a goal if they asked someone to hold them accountable to their goal. And they fully committed to accomplishing that goal with their accountability partner, right? So 65%, that's huge. It's 2/3. It's 2/3 of the individuals enrolled in that study completed their goal when they asked someone to hold them accountable and they fully committed to that accomplishment. And if you have a good friend, can you do that goal with them? Is it something you share, or your partner or somebody that you live with? Can they help to keep you accountable, motivated, etc.? And the same can, really be seen in a lot of the Facebook support groups that I see. Even though you never meet the individual face-to-face, or you see them only over Zoom once a month, there is that sense of accountability. And I want to be able to, you to use that and leverage that for your own benefit. So whenever you can, buddy up. And then my last and favorite piece of James Clear's work is this idea of identity. And what he talks about is that actions reinforce how you see yourself. The example I'm going to give is exercising. I'm sorry, guys. I know I always use exercising examples. When you start to incorporate movement into your day, instead of saying, I will exercise, and that is my goal, 3 months later, once you've exercised, you do your physical activity, your movement regularly, whether that's 3-4 times a week, it starts to become part of you. Instead of saying, I am exercising. You're saying, I am someone, right? Now it's part of my identity. I am someone who exercises or who does a sort of movement practice. And then every time you exercise, what you're doing is you're stepping into that identity. So if I walked on Monday, what I did, it was I cast a vote. I cast a vote saying, I am someone who exercises regularly. On Wednesday, when I went for my walk, I cast another vote saying, I am someone who exercises regularly. Because you're acting in alignment. So when you do that behavior, you're acting in alignment with who you are. And I'm going to share one quote to kind of finish off. So this quote says, what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. So say it again. What you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. So my goal was to walk 3 times a week, and I was doing that for my health. A year later, perhaps I'd feel better, right? I'd have certain health benefits that I reaped, but the bigger accomplishment here that came into fruition is the fact that a year later can say, I am someone who walks regularly. I'm someone who exercises regularly. That is the greatest reward. It was like that piece really did hit home for me when I was reading the book. So with that, we're going to link these below the video, but here are just some smart goal setting and action planning worksheets. Great to get you started, to help you think about how to break down your goals, how you really look at those nuances. The National Society of Leadership and Success has even more. So I've only talked about really 2 camps of goal setting theory. There are so many different frames, different lenses that you should kind of go and explore and see if you can find a way to think about goal setting, think about behavior change in the way that really is preferred for you. And finally, I did add here James Clear's website. He has a newsletter you can sign up for. There are, blog posts, there's podcasts, there's videos. So highly recommend that you check those out if, what I've said does interest you. So with that, I do want to thank everyone for joining me on the first episode of Arthritis at Home for 2023. And I cannot wait for all of us to reconvene soon. Take care. Thank you. Goodbye.